gentlemen, this is your captain, and I'd like to welcome you aboard Flight 226. Looks like we'll be a little over 2 hours en route. We're currently cruising at an altitude of 35,000 feet. If you would like to...
Hey, how are you? Hey, excuse me, how are you?
I'm fine.
Yeah, I mean, as you can see, we're the only two people on the plane right now, so you got global service too?
Yeah, somehow I've been able to maintain it during a pandemic, which is quite miraculous.
I had to pay extra for it, so yeah.
I see.
I mean, I was just wanting to make some conversation, you know, nobody's on the plane yet, but I can tell you.
Yeah, I think I may have lost my social skills during the last 2 years, but sure. How are you?
I think the other people still trying to board must have lost their social skills as well because they're not making it on the plane very well.
It's fine.
Yeah, no, just small talk. I mean, what do you do for a living? You got the Starbucks before you got on. That's great.
I did.
I missed it.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
What do I do for a living?
Yeah.
I guess I have one of two choices here. I can either tell you that I'm a futurist, and looks like we'll continue the conversation, or I could tell you that I'm a salesperson. All right, I'll bite the bullet. He's not going to stop talking to me. I'm a futurist.
A futurist? A futurist? I've never heard of it before. Wow, what a crazy job title. I mean,
so crazy.
What do you have, like a crystal ball that you look into?
Yeah, and tarot cards.
Really?
Yep.
Did you bring it with you on the plane? I would love to see the crystal ball.
No, of course not. I had to check it because it's more than 3 ounces.
Okay, you're also a comedian, apparently.
In my spare time.
I see. Well, maybe this woman's a little crazy. Maybe I shouldn't talk to her.
Maybe you shouldn't talk to strangers, is the thing.
All right. Well, welcome on board the plane. You have lots of seats that you can sit in. Well, it's gone now, so...
Welcome to the Wicked Opportunities podcast. We've obviously reached that point in the pandemic where the skits are becoming more and more involved. And if you weren't watching along, there is a video that goes along with this podcast. And if you want to see our incredible green screen techniques, you need to check it out. My name is Yvette Montero Savatico.
And my name is Cecil B. DeMille. No, Frank Spencer. But I was trying to think of some famous director, and for some reason I dredged somebody up from...
Cecil B. DeMille?
Yeah. He directed the 10 Commandments, which at one time was the only videotape that I even had. So every night I watched the 10
That should have been
Commandments.
the skit. That should have been the skit instead of the crystal ball.
Yeah. It's not that the movie's okay, but it was the only thing I owned, and I had a VCR. Do you guys know what a VCR is?
Do you know what a VCR is?
So my name is Frank Spencer. Welcome to the Wicked Opportunities podcast. And as you can tell, we're talking today about the crystal ball.
Yes. The name of this podcast is Did You Pack Your Crystal Ball? This is our semi-regularly scheduled podcast that we aim to do weekly that we fail miserably.
I would say I promise that this is going to be more regular now because a podcast is supposed to be regular.
Yes.
But me making any promises during this moment in
the
time.
season of our lives.
No, it's not going to.
It's probably not the best idea.
There's a lot going on. We're planning for 2024 at the moment, so there's a lot going on.
We are. Yeah, so this year in the Wicked Opportunities podcast, we have attempted to come to you weekly. And as we've always done with the Wicked Opportunities podcast, we're always looking at the challenge of our complex environment and trying to find a way to update our operating system and our mindsets to see that increasing complexity not as a foe, but as a friend. And in this year in particular, we are tackling the wicked problem of foresight integration. How do we make foresight our operating system? And what are some of the hurdles that we have experienced as practitioners, as consultants, really as students of the field, because I still consider myself a student of foresight, a student of the futures field. I think that any good futurist should continue to learn. And so we try to bring to this venue sort of an unplugged, unedited, real life look at how we have overcome some of those issues. We spill the tea, as we like to say, at the Wicked Opportunities podcast. and we get to be a little bit more ourselves and give you a bit of behind the scenes so that you can learn from our experiences in the real world, looking to implement foresight within organizational, institutional, societal contexts that, let's face it, they're still using old operating models. So it can be really, really challenging.
You said that on these podcasts we get to be more of ourselves, but we have talked about doing some behind a paywall that were
even more raunchy.
Yeah. What is it? NSFW, not suitable for work.
Are you saying that we're going to start an OnlyFriends?
OnlyFriends. Which is not, but yeah, that actually was good that you said OnlyFriends, so that we don't say what the real name of it is. Don't say.
Only Friends of Foresight?
Yeah, Only Friends of Foresight.
Wink, wink.
Oh, that could be really interesting. Like, we start the platform Only Friends of Foresight, and then all of you futurists, you have your own page, and it's like $5.99 a month.
You know.
Right. It's like, whoa, the future is naked. So, which it is.
It is.
Which it is.
The naked futurist.
The naked futurist.
The naked cowboy in New York Times. This is really, and Ashley's going to really like this podcast. Because there's a video for it.
I mean, it's just like, it fell right off a cliff, and you didn't even know you were near a cliff.
It did. Well, it was the whole trying to green screen is what it was. That's what set us up.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, but obviously we are, sharing more of the secrets, so to speak. And I think this particular week, we're sharing something that everybody who's ever done any moment of work in the futures field can probably relate to, but I still think there's a lot of helpful information here, and how we have even recently had people say to us, basically, where's your crystal ball?
Yeah, I mean, and so the obviously the skit is always, as it always is, very tongue-in-cheek, but always based on reality.
That's right.
And this idea that number one, people liken or think that the foresight field is about prediction, and they think that we have some magical crystal ball to get to those predictions. And we're fond of saying that not only do we not have a crystal ball, if we did have a crystal ball, it would be of no use to you. So we'll talk a little bit about where this desire, this like core desire that people have for prediction comes from, and why obviously we don't try to predict in strategic foresight or as futurists, and how you can maybe overcome that very common hurdle or misconception that the foresight field is about prediction.
Yeah. I mean, there was so much there. I paused for a moment because I was like, which direction which one of these things do I even want to say?
Yeah,
now?
we could do a 6-part series on this one topic, really.
Exactly. But I mentioned a moment ago that we were in a recent conversation with someone who was saying, I really want to, engage your firm.
Right.
And let's have that, initial call.
I mean, who doesn't love a good intake call?
Oh.
That discovery phase, am I right?
It's
so much
near and
fun.
dear to my heart. It's just the most wonderful thing.
It's second only to the proposal phase.
Yeah, because
followed shortly by the ghosting phase.
The ghosting phase is the best phase of all.
It's the best phase of all.
Best phase of all.
So awesome.
Hey, you said that we're getting ready to sign the contract, and it's like, boo.
I wish I had a cricket. We're gonna have to add a cricket here.
I used to do a good. My sister said I did a good cricket.
Well, wouldn't you give it? Not terrible.
I mean,
not terrible.
I'm not saying it's
not
going to
terrible.
win an Emmy or anything.
No. It's good.
So this particular client.
Prospect.
Thank you for correcting.
Because
that's right.
Let's be clear.
Gone.
Woo, ghost. Yeah. This is the sound for the ghost. Woo, called Scooby and the kids.
Yeah. If it weren't for you meddling foresight practitioners, we would have.
I would have gotten away with ghosting you.
That's right. So, this prospect. I might have talked for about 30 minutes. I said, look,
I could hear you from outside
interrupt
the
me
studio.
At any moment.
You were going strong.
I was trying because I saw the looks on their face. It was video as well.
I could tell what they were asking you, that they were like, you're a forecaster, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what people think, right? They think that futurists
That's right.
are forecasters, and
Well,
that's why they...
And you hear us say all the time, it's like, that's why we don't really like the word forecasting. And
Yeah.
I get it. I've had people write back and say, don't be nitpicky. And some people need to hear forecasters. It's what they're used to. But I'm trying to train people away from
Yeah,
that.
I mean, of course, I agree with you. That's why we're business partners. We agree on most things. But, like, I think that if... I believe in building a bridge.
Sure,
100%. The
absolutely.
problem is if you build a bridge to the wrong town,
Yeah.
then you're gonna it's
Yeah.
gonna be a problem from the beginning. Like the
You're
bridges aren't gonna connect.
How do we get here? Bridge too far. It's being
No.
shelled. It's like-
Because it's not for. I mean, forecasting is a thing. It's something that exists.
That's right.
And it uses the past to extrapolate the future in a linear
right.
path.
That's right.
And it's effective for about 3 hours right now.
And it's a good way to tell people, it's like, hey, that's interesting you said forecasting, because I can explain to you what forecasting is and why it's not foresight and what
Right,
foresight is
right,
based on
right.
that. So
Yeah.
it's a good way to train people away
Yeah.
from
So
that.
he didn't like come out and say you're a forecaster. But his
No.
line of questioning
That's
was. And he wouldn't let go of it, even though you kept sort of coming at it. So
Yeah, he just said, so how are you going to know that you're right? So explain to me, how do you know you're right? Because all he could hear me saying was, I am going to predict your future. And he was like, but how through all that work that you just explained, you said something about trend hunting and pattern making and potentially scenario development, but which scenario is going to be right? How do you know you're leading me to the right path? Even though I had already explained for 30 straight minutes, but he couldn't hear me.
yeah, how do you know you're right? I mean, that we could have named the podcast that. How do you know you're right?
Yeah.
And there's so much in that phrase. There's so much fear. There's so much risk aversion.
Yeah.
There's so much misinformation. There's so much of the current structures that are in place and systems that are in place.
That's right.
I mean, he is working under a system, and he's long-time tenure in this organization.
Yeah, 20 plus years,
Yeah,
right?
he's leading the R&D function, which is problematic in my opinion, the way that he sort of...
Yeah, can we just pause for a
Yeah.
moment and let the audience just take that one in?
R&D.
I'm leading the innovation division. How do you know when you're going to be? I mean, just so much. But you tell me what's wrong with
It's
that.
the idea that you are placing bets.
Yeah.
And that, the future is singular. And that we have to, it's back to that, we have to gather all of the data. And then when we're certain, we'll move forward. It's sad that someone sitting in a position of such privilege could not accept the fact that his organization and him leading that role is actually creating the future. And he couldn't stop to think, what future do we want to create? A future that's more equitable, perhaps.
Yep.
But instead he was like, tell me what future is going to reveal itself so I can make sure I place my investments in the right place, and I win, and I'm successful, and I'm the hero.
That's right. Yeah. And actually, just to be completely honest, this individual was tasked to try to create as many startup ideas as possible, and then, throw 100 of them out there.
All the more reason to use foresight.
Exactly.
All the more reason.
Yeah. And then just to see which ones might, pan out. But you're exactly right. If you think of it a different way, if you're using foresight correctly, you would be really thinking about, what's trying to emerge and what really has legs. And that's not through prediction. That doesn't happen through prediction.
Yeah, and what are the societal values that are
What
shifting?
have legs, right? That's right.
And not only that, but how about the aspirational side of it? What future do we want to create?
That's right.
This idea that we don't have any agency, we're not in the driver's seat at all. It's some mystical thing that's going to happen, and nobody knows except the people that run the Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah.
They're the only ones that know the future that's going to reveal itself, and their models are all based on the past. So guess what? The same people that are in power and have been in power will continue to be in power, because that's the future that we are creating by our actions.
Yeah, well, I'm going to lead us down a side path here for a moment.
Let's do it.
And you didn't know that we were going to talk about this at all, but
Why do we do the whole script and the storyboarding and the conversations so that we can just...
I don't know.
I like it.
I've always wondered why, but...
Because I want to do it and I want to stick to it.
No, it's necessary. But
but it's also necessary to ignore.
It's going to help us to get back on path on the path in a minute,
All
because
right.
I'm taking us off the path.
Let's go off.
And I'll be brief about it. You know what one of the biggest mysteries of modern times is to me, actually? And I don't think anybody really thinks about it this way, but it's because we're in foresight that the mystery is flipped on its head. Because I think that most people would probably think, oh, it's a great mystery about the future and thinking about the future and foresight and all. But the bigger mystery to me is, how did we get on this, stuck in this short-termism, linearity, corporate environment that says I have an antibody against the future? How did we get here when that's not the way that the rest of the universe works? And then you literally have people, we had somebody say to us this past week, I wrapped this up a lot faster than I thought I was going to be able to. Somebody said to us this past week, oh, you're doing this Transformations of Natural Foresight retreat. I would love to go, except for one thing. I hate the word transformations.
You're not going to go there.
And I just thought it was brilliant because, Ashley Bowers, who is a part of the TFS team, was able to respond with this amazing thing about, like, I think this person might have said something like, water transforms, humans don't, which is just, I think a lot of people might think that.
Yeah.
But she responded, well, you're made of water and, you're part of the universe. And that the silent disconnection is crazy.
Yeah.
So the reason I went down that path is because it's so weird that we're in this environment that is so unnatural. And we've made so many systems so unnatural. And it's actually quite a mystery how we got stuck here, because it just makes zero sense, and you can see how destructive it is to politics and to economics and to society and to technology and all of this, and of course that puts us in a prediction place, but it's just so unnatural. Prediction is so unnatural. It's just so unnatural, and so it just fascinates me that this idea that you were talking about a minute ago of agency versus control, and the agency not being, I want to control something, but really being empowered to co-create healthy emergence. And what I mean by healthy emergence is, I know emergence is, things are complex, and then something comes out of it that we might not have expected. But I think as foresight professionals, it's really our job to prepare people to see that if we flow with the environment, as you spoke about, the values that are shifting and the things that want to emerge, then we have this ability to perceive better. And that perception allows us to co-create unearthed possibilities and unique, novel transformations, instead of like, oh, how can we make the cell phones a half an inch larger, and how can I make it a different color? And when they talk about R&D and those kinds of things, they're really trying to hedge bets on what people will buy or produce that's closely related to what they know now, instead of really transforming systems. And so speaking to this gentleman, I was really trying to get him to see the most amazing things are going to come up if you use foresight. And he couldn't hear me because he wanted to hear the most relatable things are going to come up when you use foresight, things that I already can relate to that are in my sphere of influence. And yet, at the same time, would speak out the other side of their mouth and say to me, I need to think of very provocative things, because we cannot think in terms of a car being a car anymore. It needs to be an office. And I have to think about, ways to interact with my vehicle that would be only in a sci-fi novel. And then you go there and they're like, I can't swallow that, because how do you know that will be the next thing?
I think it also comes back to, a fear of failure, and again, wanting to be successful within a current paradigm and current success criteria, and a fear of, breaking free. I think we've worked with clients for the last decade plus, where when it comes time to implement, even after they've done the great work, when it's time to implement some ideas, this is where they also have sort of a moment of sort of a come to Jesus moment, with the foresight stuff, because it's like, but the way that we've traditionally measured stuff, this is not going to necessarily, hit those marks.
Yeah.
And so not only do you need to come up with these new provocative ideas that don't necessarily stem from the past, but you're going to need new evaluation methods to see if they're successful. So you were really up against it with this
you're up against
gentleman.
it. And it's interesting you said that, right? Because we had a big client recently that said, you guys, we're hiring you to be provocative. And, we do a lot of all kinds of work, but I love it when a client says, like, you have free reign. I mean, that's sort of our classic, back in the day, you have free reign. So I was super excited about this client. Oh my gosh, they want to, build the next 50 years. And I know that it has to relate to what they're doing now. And of course it's going to be inside their DNA, but we have free reign. That's amazing. And then when we presented to them the final piece, which they were a part of building, they said to us, but how would you measure any of that? Which is what you were just saying.
What's the ROI?
What's the ROI? And you're like, you got to build new metrics.
Yeah, it has an ROI.
Actually, we showed you some of those new metrics, and you were like, whoosh, went right over their head.
It has an ROI. It's just not going to be with the same variables that you've measured success up until now.
That's right.
When you're building all new ways of working and living, it's going to require new metrics. So, so I think we're not alone in saying that, futurists don't predict. In fact, recently, if we now sort of transition into what can we learn from this situation and what can you all take away from the situation, whether you are a practicing futurist in an organization or whether you've hung a shingle and you're consulting using foresight. Of course, at the Future School, we love working with fellow consultants in the field because with a mission to democratize the field, we know that there aren't nearly enough of us out there working with organizations and institutions to implement and integrate foresight. So we love giving our consultant friends, corporate practitioners, organizational futurists, the skills, the methods, the tools to be able to do this work. Yep. And so we're not alone. This is not, record-breaking, or like earth-shattering, the fact that we've said that futurists don't predict. In fact, recently someone had said within the field, which I thought was great, we don't predict, we prepare.
Yes.
Right?
And the moment I read that phrase, I was like...
You wanted to say yes and. Yes and.
Yes and.
Right.
Yes and.
Yes and.
I don't know that I wanted to say yes and,
well,
but you're being so nice.
Because we want to...
We don't predict. I personally am also not a big fan of being future-proofed.
And they didn't say proofed.
They didn't say proofed. They did say prepared. Yes. And I do think that's a part of it.
Yeah.
And it'd be hard to deny that it's not, right?
Right.
But I think it's not predict, prepare, but actually even better, perceive. So to add a third P to that, predict, prepare, perceive. That's the better way. So how do we ready our clients and government officials and just people all over the world democratizing foresight to be perceivers of emerging realities, of novel realities, of transformation, and to flow with that? Because if we weren't in those systems of linearity and short-termism and mechanistic ways of operating, we would flow with what wants to emerge, and we would see healthy transformation taking place in human systems, and et cetera, et cetera. So I know that sounds, I made it sound easy, and
it sounds woo-woo to some people.
It might sound a little woo-woo. It actually shouldn't. It should be the way things work, right?
Yeah.
But so more than being prepared, we need to perceive what is emerging.
I would say we need to perceive what's emerging, and that the perception is also perceiving our own biases and assumptions. Because in order to perceive what's emerging, as you know, we have to have our eyes wide open. And often, as humans, we filter out information that doesn't jive with what we already know to be true. Yep. And so this is one of the reasons why that gentleman could not hear you. And it's why we say, even if I had a crystal ball, you wouldn't be able to see what's inside of it.
That's
because
right.
You haven't done the work.
Yeah.
You haven't done the work. And so
I love that point.
That perception is so important. It's perceiving the external environment, but also having the insight to know that you personally I'm perceiving a different external environment and a different future than you're perceiving.
That's right.
Than the listeners are perceiving, because
Absolutely.
you know, we're all different. We all have different experiences and worldviews and perspectives. One of the reasons why we talk about foresight being a team sport so much is because that kaleidoscope of experiences and lives makes it so important to co-create the future.
Yeah. And I just want to I want to say it's perceiving your internal world, it's perceiving your external world, it's perceiving emerging patterns,
Yes.
it's perceiving complexity, it's perceiving transformation. What you're talking about now is foresight, because foresight is this funnel discipline that really looks broadly and deeply. And so that's the only thing I have about the preparation. I do understand the good part about preparation. So, you can send your letters to Santa Claus, care of the North Pole, and tell me all about preparation and how great it is.
I get
but
it. It's the bridge thing. It's the bridge, and maybe the bridge is going
and
to
you
the
hit
wrong
on a
place.
minute ago the agency versus control piece.
yeah.
And I feel like if I'm in control, I'm prepared. But I don't know that anybody's ever really in complete control.
Yeah.
And actually, the reason you're out of control is because you're not trying to flow with what you can perceive.
I think the reason that preparation may not be the best way to frame even in a stepwise fashion is that it's going to lead them back to, well, to prepare, I need to predict. To prepare, I need to know the options, and I pick one.
Yeah. Or I'm going to be prepared for whatever comes my way, and it sounds good.
Yeah.
But the reality is, the only way you're really going to be prepared, we got to redefine what this word prepared means. It means to perceive. So, so a much larger view of, instead of like, I've got my swath, I've got my lane I'm staying in, and I'm going to not let anything get in, and I'm going to be prepared, and things are going to get in. And so, really, it's not prediction, it's perception.
Yeah.
And good foresight's perception.
You're right. The preparation almost is back to that risk aversion. I'm going to be prepared no matter what happens.
Yep.
And we do say we're going to pull from possible futures and be ready no matter what future emerges.
That's
but
right.
So
if you define preparation that way, it's better. I'm going to be ready no matter what future emerges.
Yeah. But I love the angle of perception, because as you are fond of saying, when we could perceive the future, you can co-create the future.
That's right.
I think one of the reasons why the perception thing makes people uncomfortable, there's many reasons. It's foreign to them.
Yeah.
It makes them think they're relinquishing control.
Yeah.
And they're just not equipped to do it. So it goes hand in hand with our next sort of lesson, which is the lesson of the year, which is it's about capacity building. At the end of the day, I can't hand you my crystal ball, my friend, because you won't be able to see what's inside of it. So all foresight efforts, small or large, need to include capacity building.
All right, you said it.
That's it.
Sometimes I think we who believe it very much skirt around it, because everybody doesn't want capacity building. But I'll tell you what.
But if they don't want it, their foresight efforts are going to fail.
Going to fail. What does it mean to have capacity building? What does it mean?
It could mean, something as simple as, I, as a practitioner, as a strategist, as an innovator, as an HR professional, as a person, I'm going to practice in the field of foresight to the extent that I'm going to leverage the tools, methods, and mindsets and create the mindset within me to channel and fuel my work every day with foresight. Now, again, that doesn't happen overnight.
No.
But it's definitely at the individual level. But it can also be capacity building if you are talking about the scope of an organization. It could be all the way to like culture transformation and, getting within the organization. But even then, it's really about the individual.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask, what your definition of that was. And I think that we have the same definition. But it starts with the individual. I've often said that you could present leaders' foresight or the organization foresight, but unless hearts are changed, then it doesn't stick.
Yeah.
It won't stick, because then it's only a bright, shiny object. And they think it's another just tool or methodology that they could employ once a year and it would fix some things.
And the good news is when you do this right, I just want to be clear, when you do this right, don't feel like you have to light a candle or like go on a retreat like we're doing to change hearts. Like when practiced well, when you're co-creating the future. So that's why when we do a scenario project, we don't go away and write the scenarios and bring them back. I was having a great conversation with a fellow consultant earlier this week, and she said, more and more clients are like, could you just do that for us? And I get it. Everyone's burnt out. Everyone's done. But you cannot outsource your future, friends. You cannot.
Yeah, no.
And it's not only not going to be successful in the long run, it's not going to be successful in the short run.
That's right. Whether
it's a scenario project or whatever it is. So it's worth the investment to work alongside whoever you're partnering with to co-create the future. And in that way, you are changed. Your leaders are changed. And that's what you want, because you want a sustainable effort. You don't want to keep hiring a futurist every 6 months to tell you what's the top 10 trends. That's a useless exercise. And no one in your organization is going to implement anything that comes out of that because they don't own it. They don't believe it. They don't see it. They can't perceive it.
Okay, so you just said a minute ago, and I know we only have a few minutes left here, but the idea that the reason perception seems weird is it feels woo-woo. The reason it feels woo-woo is because they haven't heard it. It's not a part of the nomenclature. It's not a part of the system that we're in. As foresight professionals, a large part of what we're doing is we're shifting systems to work better than the broken or outdated or antiquated systems that don't work, the mechanistic systems. And I love what you just said is when you build capacity that you'll finally have that ability of perception. So you can see how this is just a circle. It's like you're not going to get that perception to stick unless you build capacity, and you're not going to have capacity unless you have the perception, the change hearts, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
I had said to somebody this past week, I was having a conversation with a good friend of ours, and I thought he said something so profound it stuck with me a couple of weeks ago. It's just ringing in my head still. That if I have a revelation about something, then it has a really profound impact on me, and it changes the way I think, large or small. And then I build a framework around it.
Right, so you could repeat it.
So I can repeat it.
Make sense of it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Makes sense, yeah.
And then I go pass it to somebody else and say, like, all you got to do is just follow the steps.
Here's the crystal ball.
Here's the crystal ball, and you'll be able to. And they never had the revelation that I had, and that's what capacity building is. Another way to put that is capacity building is the sort of business corporate language.
Yeah.
The non-business corporate language would be a revelation.
Yep.
Your organization needs to get a revelation, not a mechanism.
Powerful.
Yeah.
How about if that's our shout out for today?
Oh, I love that.
Mike Compton. What do you think?
Mike Compton is the good friend that I was talking about. Mike Compton is a TFS alumna.
Yes.
Alumna would be.
Alumnus. Yeah.
Alumna, I think, is female, the female version.
I don't know.
Anyway, it doesn't matter because
he went to the future
fluidity,
school.
Gender fluidity.
He went to the future school.
But he did in Atlanta. It's been several years ago now, and we've kept in good contact. And Mike is also a embracer of holoptic foresight dynamics and transformations of natural foresight. He is an innovation professor. He was working up till recently at the Columbus College of Art and Design, where he was a design professor for many years, but now he works at Denison University, which is also in Columbus, Ohio. Mike Compton, you're amazing, and thank you for all your contributions to the foresight field.
Excellent. So speaking of transformations, if you haven't heard, we're doing an in-person retreat. There's still a couple of spots available if you're interested in joining us. This is by invite only because there's very, very small availability. But if you're interested in exploring transformations both individually and personally, as well as for the field of foresight, and you want more information, please reach out. We'd be happy to have you join us and to tell you a little bit more. We've bought out an entire property in California. It's going to be amazing.
It's beautiful.
No PowerPoint slides, no traditional training. This is going to be unlike any other TFS offering, and we couldn't be more excited about it. It's going to happen in September. And if you're interested in joining us, there's still some time if you want to grab your spot. Of course, this podcast is part of our year of free, which is still going strong. You can listen to this podcast for free. You can hear our live stream, which is coming up this month. We're going to be doing doom versus gloom.
Or doom and bloom.
Doom and bloom. Thank you. Doom and bloom. Right. So the idea of sort of those very popular dystopic visions of the future versus
The bloomy, flowery.
the toxic positivity
Yeah.
that people are saying that
Right.
others are pushing. So that's going to be a fun conversation. That's
will.
going to be live later this month. So catch that. Of course, our Global Foresight Advisory Council is hosting another session in August. Do you want to talk about that really quickly?
Yeah, they, of course, the GFAC, the Global Foresight Advisory Council, is the one who actually puts a speaker forth, and then they're all on screen as well to ask the speaker questions. But in the background, people could be asking questions. And our August guest is Pupil Bish, who does lots of foresight at the UN, is an amazing foresight practitioner.
It's going to be great.
From my perspective, having been in the field for many years, one of the sort of new rebel
Voices.
that is so powerful in the field. So we're so excited to have her.
Excellent. And of course, there's still time to nominate someone for the Year of Free to get free tuition at one of our global programs. And of course, we're still continuing and will continue to offer the Natural Foresight Framework as open source. So check out our resource center for free templates, downloadable tools. Every week or every couple of weeks, release something there. If you're not hearing about this stuff, it's probably because you're not subscribed to our newsletter 52, or it's showing up in your spam folders. So check out your junk and spam folders, because we send that out every Thursday, and that has great information about upcoming programs, free stuff, our resources, and all of that good thought leadership that we offer up, as well as dates for the live streams and the GFACs. So we hope to see you, hear you, talk to you around over the next few weeks. The summer is usually a quiet time for us, but that is not the case this year. We're going to be living on that plane that we started off this podcast with.
Yep, it's time to travel next week. That's it.
We're back
Check
to
out your
DC.
junk. Check out your junk. Check out your junk. That's what you. That's what.
Check out your junk.
Yeah, you were like, it might be in your junk or spam folders. Check out your junk.
oh.
Check out your junk.
My
I don't
money
know
don't
why.
jingle jingle.
Yeah, it falls.
falls.
I want to see you wiggle wiggle. Oh, shut up.
That's where we'll leave you. Thank you
We
for
started
joining
with
us.
the Only Friends. We end with Future Talk or whatever.
Future TikTok.
Yeah.
Foresight Talk.
All right.
All right. See you next time. Everybody stay safe.
Take care.
Bye.